call the meeting to order, I guess right up at 5 o'clock. And the board met in closed session, and we have no reportable actions. Could you please stand and join me in the salute to our flag? Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, for Board Policy 2350, any person may address the board at this time, either on an agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, maximum of 5 minutes. Do we have any public comments concerning items on the agenda? Do we have any public comments concerning items not on the agenda? Okay.
I just wanted to invite everybody to see One Man, Two Governors, famous comedy. We just opened this weekend. Tim Foster we saw there. I guaranteed a great laugh at the famous comedy. It's based off the Comedia comedy, Servant of Two Masters, and it opened this book and it's came to Broadway. And it's a huge undertaking for us, but we have two brothers who have come back and they're starring the show. And
How long's the run?
it runs Thursday, Friday, and 2 Saturdays.
This coming weekend? Yeah.
Yeah, 2 Saturdays.
There's a matinee too, if you want to hit right in the middle of the day, you can do it at 2.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to our board and executive staff reports. Is Fidel out for the whole meeting, or will he be joining us possibly?
We didn't get notification, so
Okay.
hopefully he'll be joining
Well,
us.
if he gets here, we'll go back to him then. Okay, do we have any board member reports? I would just like to speak for the whole thing. It was a great event. Thank you. I liked the venue. I liked what we got. I'm sure you've heard all the feedback on limiting the amount of time the speakers speak, but it actually became kind of comical at one point, so it was good. I got to catch up with the people at my table a little bit. But no, thank you. A great event. So it was nice to see all of us board members there too. So.
Lori, in that regard, reminds me, I was at the coast this weekend, and I was at a eating and drinking establishment, and I had my COS foundation shirt on because I played golf, and there was a fellow and his wife sitting across the bar, and so he points at me and says, COS, and I said, yes, yeah. And so he asked me if I knew, first he asked me if I knew Roger Kelly, and then he asked me if I knew Al Branco, and I said, sure, and so we talked, and this fellow happened to be the former wrestling coach at Cal Poly. So he went to school with Roger and Al, I think, and so he gave me his card and asked me to make sure when I saw Al, to make sure I let him know, and so I informed him about the Hall of Fame, and he said, well, it's about time.
Should tell him, if you hurry over, he might still be talking.
You might be able to catch the tail end of his speech.
What was his name, Ken?
His name was Linus Cowell,
Oh, okay.
and he's a faculty emeritus at Cal Poly.
Okay.
Okay. We also had the board met with the Tulare Joint Union High School Board last week. Yeah, a week ago.
A week
actually,
ago.
today. A week ago today. And we had a great meeting. We seem to really be on the same page in terms of working together with the dual enrollment, or they're not called Bridge anymore.
Right. Pathways?
Pathways. And I personally felt it was a productive meeting. Does any other board member have any other comments?
Oh, I agree. I think that.
Well, one other thing, I went to the Cahuilla Delta tea that they had, one of probably 4 males in the whole audience. But it was very interesting, and fortunately enough, I got to sit next to one of the guys, so we had something in common. But it was very well attended, and I'm sure it was a very successful fundraiser for them.
Good, I did read about that. It was big, right? I heard it
Think so.
raised
Yeah,
quite
we
a
were
bit.
invited to have a presence there, and so we decorated a table and bought a
Oh,
table
good.
and thanks to Earl and a few others, we had it
John, would you like to add your comments? You good? You sure?
Well, I just follow up what Lori said, is that, you know, we have had joint meetings with Tulare that were tense, and this wasn't, and I'm encouraged that we'll find some ways to serve high school, college, sort of jointly with students down there in the coming years, kind of up to Stan and the Tulare district staff to make that happen, but it looked to me like both boards were perfectly content to let you do that.
Good.
I did have one of the board members, we had a chance to visit at soccer as we were sitting on the sidelines. And she was talking about, and Stan, maybe you could just shed a little light, I know it's not pertaining to our meeting, so I won't take much time. And maybe Greg has gotten a little bit of this because he's been at some of the forums. I don't know if you're on any high school election type forums, but she was talking about Common Core and how she feels the public is very misinformed about Common Core. And, you know, she thought it might be a good idea if parents, you know, understood it, and she was saying, you know, it obviously doesn't pertain to the college, but she was just asking, you know, as a board member, advice on how to educate the public on Common Core so it doesn't become an issue for their board as they go forward, and she was talking about maybe having a forum. So I just told her to talk to Sarah, but it seems like all of them are feeling like they're getting hit with Common Core questions, especially because it's an election year and people
Yeah.
are very misinformed.
Yeah, it would really serve all of us well. Even though Common Core isn't a community college initiative, it will have an effect on community college because it's the framework that they're going to be realigning instruction for our K-12 students. So our staff actually has been engaged. I know we've had a number of faculty members go to Common Core workshops and conferences, and we've had some departments here on campus actually invite K-12 presenters or high school presenters to talk to Common Core about us here. So I think that's all good, and I think that high school districts, the K-12 districts, as a condition of the Common Core funding and the local control funding formula, they have to have public information. I would encourage, if this board member doesn't know, they've got to have some stuff out there for parents on their website already, because that's a condition of actually receiving the
It is,
funding.
okay.
So there's got to be some, you're right to point them to their superintendent. There's got to be some publications already linked and in place that they just need to do a better job of making sure people know where they are and how to access those.
Yep,
And then some forums would be good.
And, you know, they asked a few questions in terms of how many of their students are coming prepared. You know, we're talking about the math and the English, and, you know, I guess she was asking, how do I, now, and I guess I would ask the same question if I was her as a board member. Maybe we need to be asking them on this end. How does Common Core affect those results in terms of them being prepared in English and math? I'm sure there's some component there, but if you don't understand Common Core well enough, then you don't know how to hit that question. In terms of, as an institution, are we doing what we need to with Common Core to make sure those scores continue to improve?
Yeah, I think time's gonna tell, but here's the fundamental difference between the K-12 CST, Content Standards Movement, and what's now Common Core. Content Standards was tied to a series of specific, measurable standards, and they were quantified, and every instructor had to teach those standards. You could teach them in a variety of ways. You could use a variety of materials. So there was still some art and some design to the art of teaching to get those standards taught, but you had to cover them. They were all going to be assessed. The big challenge we found is that it was too much. The volume of standards was too great. So we were covering a lot of standards in light detail. And then when they're taking placement exams or they're looking to come into the college, we're looking for more depth of thinking. We're looking for more application skills. So Common Core is a movement to take that, in English, for example, take 84 measurable standards and shrink them down into a number that you can now teach in greater depth. So it's fewer standards, teaching them in greater depth and emphasizing more the importance of thinking, decision-making, reasoning, those kind of skills that go into achieving learning as opposed to knowing content. And that's the big difference. So if that works like it's supposed to, we ought to see a student better prepared for college, because that's the element that's been missing when they come to us.
So our tests aren't changing though.
Our
As a
tests
result
aren't.
of Common
I
Core.
think we'll look. We always are looking at our assessments and whether they're the right assessments, but we're not changing them as a result of Common
Got it,
Core. We
okay.
think Common Core is lining up more now with what college assessments are.
Okay.
Lori, in one of my forums, that was a question asked of me, was Common Core, and I had to tell the lady, I'm gonna have to get back to you, because I didn't know the answer, and I called Stan, and he
Oh,
gave me
good.
the
Oh,
answers,
so it
and I
came
was
up.
able, yeah, it did come up. In fact, the lady's from Tulare, her name is Michelle Moore, and she's very Common Core, and really has a campaign to try to get rid of Common Core. She's,
Did she know what it was, Greg?
yeah, I'm not sure, but I have also been told several states have already rejected Common Core, and they're not teaching it now in a lot of the states now,
Hmm.
so.
Over in Kings County, the Tea Party for this election cycle was interviewing incumbents about Common Core, and if they were a disciple of Common Core, then they feel it counted against them.
I'm assuming that's not the Tea Party Earl went to, right?
His would have been more fun.
Gotcha.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I think it is where you get your information, but I will say, my son just finished doing a report and he had to do both views. And his English teacher really gave, and he's a freshman in terms of Common Core, and he handed him a paper with certain examples. And I don't know if I don't know if it's an opinion or somebody's, what they took from it, because I haven't looked at the actual Common Core material, but when you look at some of the changes they've made in terms of what they're teaching students, when you look at like our Civil War, what's been taken out, what's been kept, and his whole article was, he read the book 1984, is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had to make comparisons about how our government is influencing our thinking. And he got done with the whole thing, and he sat down and he goes, Mom, do you think this is actually happening? I go, well, what do you think? He goes, well, I don't know, they're changing history right here a little bit. So, well, it's an interpretation of history, but in his view, compared to what was taught and what's being taught now, he said, those are two different things I'm being taught. And I guess, where he went to school, the Civil War, they really dug into certain topics of history in depth, and he said, that misses the point of what I was taught, even in 8th grade. So that's where they're coming from with certain issues, and I think that's what people don't understand and know is the details of Common Core, but neither do I yet. So the teaching methodology seems to be good, it's the information, I think, that a lot of people have an issue with.
That'll probably be the next big challenge.
I think a lot of the opposition is they think it's pretty much a liberal agenda.
Yeah, because certain things that have been changed in it in terms of what history and the basis.
Well, and
for-
what's funny, not funny, but I guess it's kind of historical, is when we swung all the way to the core content standards, the movement we're just backing away from now, it's because what we used to teach was too liberal. So we went to content standards which were measurable and objective, but then they were too shallow. So,
That's what right? It's the balancing scale, right? We're still trying to find that balance. Okay, well, thanks for that information. Sorry to get off track a little bit there.
Are you still on board reports?
Yes.
It's not a report, but I want to say that the way Megan set up the agenda online saved me a ton of time, and I probably did a better job reviewing it. Very easy to follow. It's easy for me, it's probably easier for everybody else. So.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, if there are no other board member reports, we will move on to our foundation report. Mr. Foster.
Hello there, folks. We actually had 2 events that the foundation was able to execute over since our last meeting. We had the Crush Party, and that was held in partnership with the Tulare Chamber of Commerce. We were at Building 8, the COS Tulare campus. We had about 150 attendees. We had great sponsorships, good vendor support for that. Some of our attendees had commented that they'd never been inside the campus, or they've maybe driven by it, but never been inside. So we still have plenty of folks that need to see the inside of our Tulare campus. We split the event net of $17,634, so that was great. Our cut of that would be $8,800, a little over $8,800. So it was a good net for us.
Yeah.
Ticket sales were good, but we could do more, but the sponsorships were really solid. And so I'd like to also thank Trustee Cardoza and Nunez for attending that event, and certainly Stan for attending the event as well. And at this point, our intentions are to do it again next year. So.
The few people that I know well that went actually said, why aren't there more people here? I think because they enjoyed it so much and they hadn't seen the campus yet, and they were, a handful of them were already foundation board members. So I think that's goes to show you that they're gonna hit up more people next year.
Good, so word of mouth should be
It's
good
word
to
of
us,
mouth.
yeah.
They
That's
just
the hope.
enjoy
It's
being there.
Something we can build on and,
Mhm.
and not change it up too much, but do some refinements
Yes,
and,
yep,
and
yep.
that type of thing.
Yeah,
So I
good.
think that'll work well. So we also had the Hall of Fame, and thank you all for attending, and we had, a little over 290 tickets sold, and so it was well attended, and, the ticket sales were great. I thought about talking to Lamar about modifying our brand new stage that we had. If you notice, we did have a stage for a trap door, but Brinkle would have only fallen about 18 inches. You know?
I know, but without that, it got him up to here.
The mic wasn't there, though, that's all that
That
mattered.
would have been funny though. But
Poor guy, he's never gonna hear the
I
end of
know,
that.
I know.
And the guy, he's come in to the office, and he's been very sweet about, and thankful for the honor. And I can truly say that he sees it as a very deep honor for him and his family.
Didn't he come up to you afterwards and say, I had a couple more items I need?
I forgot to talk about this.
I just wished I would have known more of the history, because his stories were so interesting, and for
Yes.
those in the room who served with him, that had to be, fun to hear, because he
Right.
rehashed some really, his memory is great.
Yes, yes. So it was a great event, and again, thank you very much for attendance. I think we're gonna try to do it similarly next year, and we're still looking for honorees as potentials, and so please get those to me. My goal is to get enough nominees that I can start plotting out, not only next year, but the year after that and the year after that. So we're kind of always got 3 years out, and we're contacting these folks and saying, we'd like to honor you in 2017, are you available? And,
Right.
And it's not as hurried.
Right.
Do you have?
Because it is a lot of work for an inductee, getting us all the information we need and making sure that they're contacting all the people they want to invite to the event and that type of thing.
Do you have
it's a lot.
rules of what you're looking for, criteria?
They're pretty loose. They're pretty loose. I mean, there certainly needs to be someone who has either worked or attended COS, and then have done some notable things in their time with COS or thereafter. And that's about all that we've articulated. And then we've had people make wonderful cases for that. And then there's some that you just need to drop the name and you go, oh yeah, definitely that one. It's about time type of thing.
Now, do you retain the nomination papers from year to year?
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we're compiling those as we go, and so if they're not necessarily honored this year, it doesn't mean that they're out of the running ever again, or they have to keep getting resubmitted.
Tim, if someone served on the foundation for a long time, made a huge difference, never was a student or never was an employee, would they be eligible?
I think the affiliation with the foundation would be
Would you-
something that worth consideration, or
Would you
former
research-
trustee or anything like that too.
Would you research that
I can,
and
Mhm.
get back?
certainly. Today was the launch of our application period for scholarships for the 2015-2016 scholarship run. So we have given the students until December 1st to apply. It's an online application, one application submission. The way we bill it is it's one application avails you of hundreds of potential scholarships. So go in there and answer all the questions and write a compelling essay and get good letters of recommendation in there, because those are all the deciding factors.
And
So,
students do that right off our website, Tim?
right off our website,
Okay.
yes, sir.
So
Yes.
that would also be then the seniors that are gonna be freshmen next year,
Right.
Yes, in
Right.
fact, that's another thing.
That information needs to get to the high schools, because I know last year
In
I had
fact, the
folk, we
Welcome
didn't
Center,
know.
the Welcome Center has a team of outreach folks that we're giving them, not 8.5 by 11s as we did last year, but 11 by 17 posters, a supply of them, and they're getting hand-delivered by our people that are going out to each of those campuses over the next 2 weeks. So I'm giving those to them tomorrow. They have a meeting on Wednesday. They will divvy up the high school list, and I've been told that they will be in the hands of the counselors at each of the respective high schools within the district over the next 2 weeks. And so it's ample time for them to get in there. But yes, we are driving that home. We didn't get a ton of high school seniors submitting applications, and so.
Well, and some of them, what they told me was, I wanna go to San Diego
Right.
State.
Right.
But if I don't get in, I may end up at COS. What happens if I apply for a scholarship and I get into San Diego State?
Right.
So as long as there's information that they know, apply, because if that's your second choice and you think it's a real possibility that you're gonna end up
Right.
here at COS, then you want them to apply, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think that's what deters a lot of them.
And we had a handful of folks that advised us of that in advance. We were notifying them in April about our scholarship night, that's gonna be in May, and so they quickly responded to us saying, oh, I'm not going. And so we were able to quickly move towards an alternate and
Right,
and
once,
do those.
once the students get their letters back from their four-year colleges, and usually that's March or April,
Yep.
and they let us know, we can go.
Pick the next one in
Yeah,
line.
Tim has a process, they're pre-ranked.
Perfect.
We know who the next student is who would be eligible for the
Okay.
COS scholarship.
I guess maybe making sure that counselors
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah, so the kids put it in
Tell
as
the
a.
students to apply.
The other key education component that we're trying to do in this outreach for scholarships is that you do not have to have some income eligibility. Most of our scholarships require no income eligibility whatsoever. And oftentimes, well, if I don't qualify for financial aid, so I must not qualify for scholarships, and that is absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
There's a whole philosophy of a good number of our donors that, hey, what about the kid who can't get the BOG waiver, can't get, or can't necessarily get the scholarship or financial aid otherwise, but still has bills to pay, and so they don't want that. They don't just choose not to check that box in the application process.
Tim, I think it would be good for you to share the information that you came up with that I could use when I'm out there. I mentioned the
Right.
fact that 18 years ago when I got on the foundation, we had a little over $1 million. Today, you corrected me, we have almost 10 million.
Yeah,
And then I said, well, maybe we ought to talk about how much money we've spent, and you researched it, and you can only go back for a past decade, but you
Right.
might share that. I mean, that's kind of mind-boggling, the money that has come out of the foundation.
Right, and if memory serves, Greg,
I know it
that was-
exactly if you want it.
yes. It was close to 10 million, wasn't it?
Well, it was 3.9 million
Oh,
in
right, 3.9
scholarships
I'm sorry, yes.
and 5.5 million in enhancements to the college.
Right.
So I think it was
3.9 in
9.4.
scholarships, 5.5 to the.
So almost 10.
And that's not, and even that scholarship number isn't all the scholarships that we administer. Those are just the ones that kind of came into our accounts and went out of our accounts. We support and administer a lot of what we call outside scholarships that are simply pass-throughs. And so, yeah.
Huge
It's
number.
it's been great, and I'm looking forward to it being bigger numbers.
Tim, one of the things that I'm hearing from people in the community in my area and from students is the one application does all.
Yes.
They said that's the greatest thing that has ever happened.
Good.
And they don't have to worry about, oh, am I applying for this one or this one or this one?
Right, right.
So that's much appreciated by my constituents.
Thank you, thank you. We also, thanks to Trustee Zumwalt, the professional engineering firm,
American Council of Engineering Companies.
American Council of Engineering Companies, who had an outside scholarship application process that were unable to secure enough applicants, were struggling with that and were concerned that they weren't able to give the money to the CS students. Well, John introduced me to them. I went and talked to them about the merits of using our application process to get them their pool of applicants, and if need be, go about a secondary process for a larger pool of applicants that can be then whittled down to a smaller pool and ultimately make the selections that way. They want to do it that way, and we're facilitating that. So now, thanks to that conversation, we're going to start with $3,000 more in scholarship funds that are going to be going to COS engineering students, 2 continuing scholarships at $500 and 2 transfer scholarships at $1,000 each year. And hopefully that will flourish even further as we prove that we can do what we say we do.
Great.
Other than that, I have upcoming events. For your convenience, I gave you those in my little cards, and so I won't take any more of your time.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No, okay. And our superintendent president's report, Mr. Carasosa.
I'm actually going to pinch hit tonight also for Jennifer on the accreditation report, which comes
Okay.
right before mine, so I'll take these
Oh, yeah,
next two.
sorry, I
Dr.
crossed her off.
Lacerna,
I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay, she's home ill tonight, and
Okay.
based on how she sounded on the phone, and I said, you please don't come. Don't share those germs with us. The follow-up report for our accreditation is finalized, and it's on your agenda tonight for a second and final reading. And we have all of the backup documentation and evidence now properly packaged. I think Jennifer has shared this recently, but I'll remind you that the visit is set, a revisit of our accreditation team. It's a 3-member team of the original team that was here, is set for October the 27th. It's a 1-day revisit. We think that bodes well. They're gonna come that morning, spend a few hours on campus, leave that same afternoon. We don't have their itinerary yet. We don't know whether or not they'll want to do extensive interviews. Rumor has it that in a follow-up visit like this, they'll speak mostly to administration, faculty leaders, and probably call it a day. They really want to see the evidence and the documentation, especially the types of recommendations that we had to respond to, which mostly had to do with closing the completion cycles of the work that we had proposed and had underway when they came back. So we're excited about getting the visit done. Then they'll finalize a report, submit it to the ACCJC. ACCJC will hold their first of their 2 annual meetings in January. We'll be there again. We don't want to leave anything to chance. They may or may not want to see us, and we may not have a lot to say, but we do want to be there when the board takes up our follow-up report. And then their action letters will come out in February, and we look forward to a positive action letter. Jennifer would also remind you that in 2015, we're actually midway through then our next regular 6-year cycle. So we're preparing now for what would be our regular midterm report between 2012 and 2018. And so we'll be working on that in 2015. Also wanted to share with you that this last week in Costa Mesa, the RP group, which is research group across the state, hosted a student success conference and had a number of sessions on accreditation and accreditation response and the new standards and the recommendations. And Jennifer and Dolly and I, Dr. Ostrick and I, and Dr. Trimble was scheduled to attend. She wasn't able to make it in the end, but we were able to host a session presented by College of the Sequoias on how to respond to the accreditation sanctions. So it was a positive opportunity for us to share our story. I was telling Thea before the meeting started, you never know how these sessions are going, but one good key, because people can come and go as they want, is the room filled up. We had about 50 seats and it filled up and nobody left. And so they were there and they hung on till the end and they asked great questions. I think the look on most of their faces was, wow, this college did a lot of work. They might have leaned over to each other and said, there's no way we can do all that work. But I think we made a positive impression and extended our strategies and our processes out to other community college staff and administrators to think about in terms of their own response to their accreditation status.
Was City College there?
I don't know if I saw anybody. They weren't doing a workshop, but I don't know if I saw anybody from City College specifically in our audience.
Did anybody else from our college attend that?
Yeah, we had faculty who were there for their basic skills training. We had Dr. Robinson was there the day before this conference actually started. Kristen was doing some reconnaissance for us in TrackDat. TrackDat is our tracking information system. Joni Jordan was there. We had 3 or 4 other faculty. Eric Armstrong, trying to remember. So we had a handful of academic faculty, administrators, both at the pre-conference and the conference. All right, and then just to spill over quickly into my report, I wanted to make you aware of a document I placed at your place this evening. You know that I get these monthly reports from the Chancellor's office, and I thought it was appropriate, since we had agendized, to give you a quick update on SB 850, the bill, Senator Block's bill that authorized community colleges to offer 4-year degrees. I wanted to give you the Chancellor's update on that. He has it highlighted as his item number 1 here. And this is very consistent with what we've been sharing. Hopefully you've read a little bit of what we've been able to report to the news. We were in the news here in Visalia. We were in the news in Hanford and Tulare. And we're anxious to see what the the response for proposal process looks like. The bill was signed, governor signed it. A couple of the key criteria are that community colleges can propose a four-year baccalaureate degree in their institutions, but it can't replicate any degree currently being offered anywhere in the CSU or the UC system. So for all intent and purposes, they're asking us to create new bachelor's degrees. They're gonna give the highest priority to those bachelor's degrees that respond directly to a demand in the industry for trained workforce and that align with strong two-year degree programs that community colleges already have in place. So they want to see that you're building on a two-year degree program that you have data to show is a successful program, and that feeds into a four-year degree that's going to meet a demand that currently is or will be emerging in the workforce. So you can see in the Chancellor's update here, they're still working with the CSU and the UC system to design what that proposal will look like. They expect there to be a pretty strong run on the application. Only 15 colleges are going to be in on the pilot. The pilot will be to implement sometime between now and 2017. So there's at least another year's worth of planning and preparation before the first degree programs can be awarded. But we're anxious to see what those look like. And we've shared information across our college. I updated Academic Senate with a written update last week. Dr. Trimble and I have been in kind of constant communication about the respective roles that we would play, how we might assemble a task force, how we would pull faculty and administrators together to do an analysis. But what we need to do the analysis is we need that application. We need to see what the criteria looks like. So as soon as we get those, they should be out in December, then we'll have a better idea of what happens next.
Do you have a short list of potential programs?
Well, I think there, you know, depending on the number of faculty that were sitting in here, John, they could come up with a longer list than my short list, but I know of a couple. The one I've used that's probably one of the best examples is not one of our longest standing programs, but most recently when we implemented the two-year degree program in physical therapy assistance, that happens to be a highly successful two-year degree program now, and it matches with demand that's emerging in the industry. Just like there are fewer physicians and more physicians assistants, there's going to be fewer physical therapists because as they are required to earn doctorate degrees, there's going to be fewer and fewer of them. And to keep healthcare costs down, they're going to be employing more physical therapy assistants. So we see the demand for physical therapy assistants going up a little bit like the demand for nurses has gone up now, to where most nurses will tell you in order to get hired fresh out of college, I can't just have my RN, I need to have my bachelor's degree. So we think our physical therapy assistant program is the type of program that matches up well because it's a successful program. It's not currently a degree offered anywhere else in the CSU-UC system, and it meets a demand in the industry.
I noticed that most physical therapists now, the young ones, have at least a master's degree.
And if you were to talk to Jonna Shingle and the staff that work in our department, they see the doctorate degree as becoming the new minimum standard for physical therapy.
But almost all the offices that I've paid attention to that open from scratch are headed by a personal doctor's degree.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, the healthcare industry, allied health is one of those areas the Chancellor has asked us to focus on. I think industrial maintenance is another one. And there's a lot of interesting ideas right now about packaging a four-year degree with a somewhat, and I say this term to just because I want to include a somewhat generic title, like a degree in industrial arts technology, but it can cover a number of things so that it's broad enough to be able to fit certain things under it that are not going to be called out currently in the four-year degrees that are being offered. But you could specify welding, you could specify industrial maintenance, and those are the kinds of strong two-year degree programs that we have that are going to be hitting the mark for job availability and what the trend data shows us are going to be jobs that are going to be needed in the industry. So, and I think we have several of them across our campus that people would come in and make a pretty strong case for their two-year degree feeding into a four-year degree. So once we know what the application criteria are, I think we can do a pretty good analysis of what our programs are like and find out if we got one that can be a strong contender. I think Thea agrees with me. We want to put the time and energy and work into it if we have one that we think can win. it's a lot of work to put into something that's gonna be a long shot, because it's really competitive. So you wanna have something there, you wanna have an application put together where you've checked off all the boxes and you think you got a strong one. Because our region is definitely gonna get one. Someone in this region's gonna get one of those 4-year degrees because our demographic needs it. So,
I would think that all the work we've done on accreditation and student learning outcomes and our data is gonna help tremendously.
just having solid data and being able to use the data to substantiate is gonna be a real plus.
Lori, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
What do you think the academic senate, not you, but the academic senate, would they be enthused about the college's ability to do this?
We didn't have a lot of comment last week, but part of that was because we had a huge agenda. One of the things that the state academic senate is, they did not vote in favor of this bill.
Really?
The concern they have is that already the community colleges are crunched for money. And if you put in a 4-year degree without stipulating that the funding is gonna be there for all of it, not just the courses, but Stan and I talked about this. How are you gonna do the registration? How are you gonna, the counseling has to be different. All these things have to be different. If they're not gonna fund it all, then it's gonna suck money away from the programs we have.
I was actually looking for a philosophical reaction.
I think that it's, I think it's a little scary. I mean, because it's, it has huge effects. And I think that it's a good idea to look at just a few possibilities and then really look at the data. And I think physical therapy is a good example, because there is gonna be demand, there's just no doubt about it. And I think the faculty will get on board if we make sure that we've addressed all the questions. I mean, it's the same as anything, that if you're not afraid to answer all the hard questions, then they're much more likely to get on board. But you say, oh, it'll work out, that's not gonna
Right,
fly.
right. And one of the things that I think it will do for those colleges that are able to put one together, that they can advance and they can sustain, is then whether that's the only one they have or they get 2 or 3 after that, it gives credibility to the level of community college. Because community colleges now have, with the 4-year degree availability, have, I think, demonstrated how cost-effective and rigorous the education is at community colleges. And that's something that we're all gonna benefit from. It elevates our academic profile, especially if we can, like Thea said, answer all those tough questions. And even if our college's claim to fame is 1 4-year degree for a while, we've answered those questions, and it shows that we've got that academic profile.
Sounds like part of your negotiation with Chancellor's office would be an add-on to FTS.
Or something, yeah, or something.
By add-on, I mean, give us that.
An augmentation, right.
Yeah, and that, as far as I know, that hasn't been decided yet.
Yeah, I think,
It's gonna be a little bit more than the basic FTES, but we're not gonna be getting as much as the CSU's get.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I'm kinda sorry I
All
asked.
about the money.
Yeah, yeah, and.
I think what they're forcing us to do, though, John, really, what they're forcing us to do is see if we can figure it out.
Right.
Yeah,
Because if we're good enough to figure it out with the dollars we have, it'd be a win for the chancellor's office.
Your answer doesn't really surprise me a lot, because you're always pretty thoughtful, and bringing up those questions is always a good idea, but I would hope the college wants to do something like that, if we can really accomplish it and there's jobs. One of the biggest problems we have around here is the inability to retain educated people for those kinds of jobs. And if we grow them here, a lot of times they stay here.
Right.
But I will tell you that the other thing that comes up occasionally is the whole idea, and I think that this is a foot in the door as well, is that at some point we have to stop duplication. We cannot afford to teach the same classes at community colleges, at CSUs, and at UCs. So at some point, a decision's gonna have to be made to say, you know what? No one then let's pull some of the stuff, how UC's down into the CSUs and more down here.
I can see that in the political future. If community colleges start to demonstrate the ability to successfully deliver four-year degrees, and CSU and UC want to fight that off a little bit because they didn't want to give up any of that territory to begin with, then future negotiations would be, okay, we'll stop the community college degrees, let's take the undergraduate work and put it with them. That's probably somewhere in the future.
This governor's just goofy enough, he probably ought to try and do something before he's out of office.
Okay, Stan, are you complete with
The
your
last thing I
report?
wanted to
Okay.
do was just highlight for you. I put this at your place as well, and you'll remember last meeting, we talked about revisions that we had been making to the management handbook. And this isn't the full handbook, this is just the cover page, so you would have a reference for what it was. But you'll remember at that meeting, Thea talked about expressing some concerns on behalf of Academic Senate about the role that faculty members were playing, specifically in the section of this handbook that deals with recruitment and selection of management personnel. And I remember her and I discussing in front of you that we were gonna take some time, we were gonna get together and we were gonna talk about that. And I think it was John asked, hey, when you get done with that, we'd like to see what you guys came up with. So this is just selected pages from that new handbook, which show you in underlined font what we agreed upon when Thea and I met, that were the necessary clarifications, really. There weren't many revisions. I think most of it was just taking the time to talk philosophically with each other about what this meant and to clarify. Many places, one example is many places in the language, I had, for sake of expediency, listed senior management or designee, senior management or designee. And what we did is we went through and, as I was clarifying, saying, well, that would be vice presidents. Then we agreed, you know what? Then let's put VP. Because every time we were able to pull senior management out of there, it made it more specific for who would be involved in that. And it made it less, feel a little bit less like senior management or by extension, the president was dominating the process all the way through. So you'll see those kinds of changes here, and then also clarifying faculty roles. And I think one of the important changes was we had not originally envisioned a faculty member sitting on both of the selection panels when it's a two-panel process. But Thea and I talked about and both were very comfortable with how a faculty member would be brought to the second panel in the process on the technical skills through a recommendation that comes from Academic Senate. So that it's not an appointment by union contract, it's more an appointment of a faculty member because they have expertise in that technical area. So for example, we're hiring a VP of Admin Services, which involves a lot of finance. Then I would go to Academic Senate and say, recommend to me a faculty member with experience in this area. We pull a faculty member from the Budget Committee, because that's the area where they've developed their expertise. So this is just an FYI for you now. Manual is done, but I left this underlined version so that you could see the compromises that we worked out when Thea and I were able to meet. And I think it went pretty well.
Well, Thea gets to tell us that next. You're up.
Yeah, I want to thank Stan. It did go really well, and we were able to clear up a lot of things. One of the things that I wanted to report is that the Academic Senate workload just went up exponentially in the last week. As you may know, the board policies and administrative procedures for the 4000s, which is academic services, are in the process of all being reviewed. And we got our first batch of 36 a week ago. We've decided we're going to break them into groups of 10, but still, in addition to those 36, and there's plenty more to come for next semester, we've also been looking at the basic skills year-end report, the student success and support plan, which is coming before you this evening as an information. On our next agenda, we'll have the student equity plan, the master plan, and in November, our new constitution will be coming before the Senate. And the process for our constitution is that it will come before the Senate for ratification, and that ratification will then designate that constitution go out to the full faculty in December. We've set the meeting for December 3rd at this point, if we can get the room. We'll have a full faculty meeting to go over the Constitution. vote during spring convocation. To ratify the Senate, ratify the new constitution, it will take a 2/3 majority of all faculty, not just those that vote, of all faculty. So, our idea was to have the vote during convocation since they need to come anyway. So as they sign in, they'll get a ballot, and hopefully then we can, make that go. To try and get through what's on our plate, the exec committee decided today, pending room availability, we're gonna add 2 additional meetings, to, our schedule this fall. And so we will end up with 2 meetings in November and 1 meeting in December. So that, hopefully then we can make sure that we get through all these really important things.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? That's you? Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of work coming up
They,
before the
you
end of
know,
the year.
Thea has been doing a great job, and I think she's been patient, because it's a lot, and we kind of commiserate a little bit about, hey, we're feeling the same way. Some of this is driven by the new timelines for the equity plan and the student success plan. But some of it is, we look each other in the eye every once in a while, and you look at the integrated planning and our governance model, and what we've decided is to do things right is really hard work.
Do it right the first time.
It's-
Next year won't be so
But
much,
we're doing
yeah.
things better now than we've ever done them before, and that requires a different machinery. But once we get over this hump, we think there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. This is definitely a crunch period, though.
Well, thank you, we appreciate all your work. Okay, COSTA report, CSEA, no report. Do we have a CASAFA report? No report, all right. We'll move on to our first information item, which is our staffing report. Mr. Batch.
At our last board meeting, I presented a staffing report which indicated all the employees we have at all 3 campuses, all the classified faculty, part-time faculty, managers, and confidential employees. One of the questions the board had, however, was how does that number compare to how many students we have on campus? And it was asked that I bring forward another staffing report to this board meeting, which shows a relationship between the number of permanent employees versus the number of students or the FTEs we have on campus. And what you have on the screen and in front of you is a report comparing these two for the last 5 years. And this is for information only, no action is needed, but I will be presenting these numbers next September as well with the 15, 16 years.
I really like it. We just need to total it. That's okay. If it was a spreadsheet, I would have done it myself. See where the totals are missing.
Give me
It's
about
okay.
10 minutes, I'll get you an answer.
No, that's okay, that's okay. I like this, and I think from year to year, it's important for us to see, because obviously we vote on all the personnel changes, but
Yeah, and it does show, I guess, as I look across the top too, and you remember what was happening in 10, 11, 11, 12, you can see a little ebb and flow, definitely with the budget, the freezing of the fawn.
yeah, and our FTS going down,
Mhm.
5,000.
Seeing the restoration of some of those positions now, we won't see the full impact maybe of the faculty, because this would be the year that if the fawn is released, that we're gonna be really required to jump that back up to what it was.
But wouldn't you say in there is also, and I guess this is where I'd like to hope and think that maybe some of that is related to just efficiencies as well, right?
I think so.
Building classes and just being overall more efficient in our Tulare and Hanford centers. I would hope that some of that is a result of that as well.
I think so.
And I think that's what we want, I would want as a board member, is to see to see
Mhm.
that data for what it's worth,
And
and
so,
not what
yeah,
I just think.
And so those total numbers in relation to the student FTS is a good indicator of that, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
If I batted it correctly, we're from 2010 to 11 to 2014, 15, we're down almost 100.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely are more efficient than we were before.
And we're getting funded the same, our FTS, though, funding is the same, pretty
Mhm.
much, with these students going up. Yeah, that was the goal anyways, without having diminishing returns, though, to our students also, so we have to balance that out, but I appreciate that. That's just much easier to ask questions instead of just guessing based on memory. So thank you. Do you have any questions on the staffing report? Thanks, John. Okay, we will move on to item number 2, which is our Student Success and Support Program. Mr. Calvin.
Hi, everybody. The Student Success and Support Program was born out of the Student Success Act of 2012, the statewide Student Success Task Force. It replaces the old matriculation funding program that we had. We had a requirement to have a matriculation plan every single year. This does that and a lot more. The funds, what the plan talks about and the funding pays for core services here: orientation, assessment, and counseling. What the state wants to do is make sure we do a good job on the front end of bringing students in, orientating them, assessing them, getting them in their proper classes, and making sure they all have student ed plans, and they'll pay us for that. Last year, they paid us, just over $500,000, and this year it's gonna go up to 1.2 million, actually $1.26 million. And so last year we funded part of our orientation, all of our assessment, and part of our counseling out of that money. This year, you're not supposed to supplant. Last year, we were able to, because what we did is we brought back everything that matriculation used to pay for. For a number of years, when they took matriculation dollars away, our general fund absorbed all of orientation, all of assessment, and all of counseling. Last year, we were able to restore some of the funding for those items. This year, because we can't supplant, most of this money, the additional $700,000 or so that we're getting, will be new expenditures for us. And so we proposed beefing up our welcome center, beefing up our counseling area, bringing 2 new counselors into our student success center, as well as purchasing several different software systems that will help the district, most notably DegreeWorks, which is a comprehensive degree audit system used by students and staff alike that will help students to achieve and also follow their success at all times. Really what it comes down to is that students will be able to kind of get the information that currently they can only get from counselors. They'll be able to get it on their own. That way when they come for their half-an-hour appointment with a counselor, they're not reinventing the wheel. They're coming with a real good knowledge of where they stand in relation to achieving their degree or certificate goals, and they can spend that half hour more productively. So we're pretty excited about that. It's a one-time charge of about $250,000. Then in the future, it will be ongoing maintenance that will also be paid out of the SSSP funds. We've also proposed I think I have it listed here. You see, for this year, we've got counselor salaries, staff salaries, including an evaluation specialist, and also in staff salaries, we have a half-time research person to help with all of our recent increased use of data. We decided to invest in more research for Dolly's area, so we're excited about that. At any rate, we come up with $1.26 million, and the 2-to-1 match is something that it's services that we're paying for already. The rest of our counselors are part of that match. The dean's salary in that area is part of that match. The admissions and records, our entire admissions and records area is part of that match. Our welcome center folks is part of that match. So there is a 2-to-1 match requirement, and we've made it for this year, so we're excited about that. In subsequent years, they've talked about increasing the $1.2 million, and they've also talked about lowering the match requirement in future years, because I think most districts are just about at their limit in terms of being able to match new funds. So going just so districts don't have to take on new expenditures in order to obtain the SSSP funds. Finally, I wanted to at least note, and Dr. Trimble brought it up as well, that this is being done in conjunction with the student equity plan. We're preparing that in student services right now. It's due to the state in January. You will see it at the November and December board meetings. Essentially, what we've spent the last 5 or 6 months doing is looking at all of our student populations in relation to student success, persistence, transfer, degree and certificate completion, the 30-unit threshold. And we've looked at all the student populations and compared them to one another. And what the student equity plan asks us to do is identify any groups that are specifically not measuring up to their counterparts here at COS. And then they give us extra funding to address just those shortcomings. And so we're pretty excited about that. We're pretty excited about being able to really address some areas that have long needed to be addressed here, and they're giving us funds to do it. And so we're working to kind of incorporate what we're doing now in the SSSP plan in with what we know we're going to have to do with the student equity plan come January. So you'll be seeing that in November and December. We think it'll be a positive step for student services in our district as a whole. Are there any questions regarding the SSSP plan or funding?
Any questions? Not for me. Thank you, Brent. Okay, I think you're staying up there, right, Brent? Are you doing our basic skills report? Or is that you, Stan?
Do we have basic skills left?
Oh, I put that, I think you haven't.
Yeah, Lori,
Stack up.
I'm
Oh, I
sorry.
have the old one. Oh, shucks, okay, sorry. I'm using the one we met on. Okay,
We're on
I'll go
board.
back to here.
BP.
I knew better than to do that. I
It's okay.
apologize. Okay, we are on item number 3, board policy. Board
Okay.
policies, my apologies.
Mine is a very short item for us tonight. It's a first reading on Board Policy 3570, titled Smoking on Campus. But I wanted to use this quick first reading to show you a couple of things, I think significant improvements we've made in refining our process for reviewing, revising, and approving board policies. First of all, let me cover this board policy with you quickly. It's a general institutional policy. It's about smoking and use of tobacco. And you'll see underlined and in bold, the only real revision or update that needed to be made on this now is as we have evolved, there are new products in the category of smoking that are called vapor devices and inhalants. And those are basically known as electronic cigarettes. And you see them used a lot by young people now. We needed to include those in this policy because they are prohibited also. So everything about our basic smoking policy stays the same, but we did need to update it so that it included the new electronic cigarettes and inhalers. So it's a first reading. It'll be back for you for second reading and final approval. What I wanted to point out, though, for you real quickly is the notation at the top where we have in bold and underlined that this is a non-10+1 revise. That designation of whether it's a 10+1 or a non-10+1 now is on every BPAP as they go through the system. So it tells us how they get routed. It tells us if they have the 30-day stay at every location and then back to senior management, or if they have a 30-day stay and then they go back to academic senate. 10+1 going back to senate, non-10+1 coming back to senior management, and then district governance senate. And then you can see the way we've coded them on the bottom. Again, this is compliments to Megan. She put a little data table down here in the bottom so that every step along the way, she's adding additional dates to how these are getting processed. So the original author of this revision was Mr. Calvin. It started in the circulation at step 3, which was the first 30 days, and you can see the dates that it went through that, and then it went to step 4 to senior management. It went from there to district governance senate. It went to academic senate, and then it's back for final review and to the board at tonight's meeting. So having that little tracking device at the bottom, I think, is another way to help us make the system we have more effective, a little bit more efficient.
Okay, any questions?
Now,
on
the
the first read?
governance senate is the student senate?
The District Governance Senate is the collection of, cross-section of faculty and staff. The Academic Senate is faculty-based, and then the Student Senate is the student body, Student Senate. But the Governance Senate has representatives from Academic Senate and Student Senate sitting on it.
Dan, if I could,
Yes.
the other thing that has really helped tremendously that they've also changed is as they route them through, at the end of each one, it's actually kind of like this, but it tells you what step you're on. So when I send it out to the Academic Senate, they know this is our first 30 days, this is the 10+1, we're gonna get it again. It's right there. So again, it's easy, it's much easier to follow even when they get sent out to us, where we are in our step process.
Yeah,
It's helpful.
on this example that we're showing them, Thea, that's that data table right there
Right.
across the bottom.
And so what happens when it comes to us is it's vertical and it leaves it blank. So it'll be at the first 30 days, it'll just say at Academic Senate, District Government Senate, and the rest of the steps are blank.
Okay,
For information only, it'll be back for final approval.
thank you, Mr. Carrizosa. We will move on to our consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar at the request of any board members. Do we have any items that need to be removed from the consent calendar for any reason? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Sherman, seconded by Mr. Mann. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, moving right along, we are on our first action item, which is curriculum. Mr. Calvin.
Pinch hitting for Dr. Lucerna tonight. We have, I think, 15 modified classes, primarily due just to them being up on their 5-year cycle, needing a change here or there. We also have 4 new classes, one in cosmetology, one in geology, and then 2 in physics. And then we have several modifications to existing certificates or degrees. Again, part of that is just the updated review process. And then we have a handful of new degrees, in fact, 3 transfer degrees, which we're excited about. Business administration, economics, and I know I saw one more, studio art. And then 3 or 4 new skill certificates. So busy month for curriculum. I'm certainly willing to entertain any questions you might have. Yes, sir.
The new classes of physics 56, 57, and there was another one, 56 and 57. There used to be a series of physics classes that was 4A, 4B, 4C that was intended for engineers and science majors. Is this what this is?
Physics 56 is what you're probably used to being physics 2. E&M plus heat, and then physics 3 is modern physics.
But it says it's new.
I think they're new classes to more closely align with the state requirements.
So you did away with the other ones and added this one. They're not, they're not, those others don't exist anymore?
Correct.
Okay.
And these replace the old 2 and 3.
Some of the
6 and
content's
7.
probably consistent though, right?
A big chunk of it's consistent.
Well,
Right.
But 4A, B, and C goes back, I saw Thea frown, I'm showing my age, is what you keep going.
So I think big chunks of it stay the same. There were just some things that we had to change to have it more closely match the statewide ID process.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
updates.
Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Calvin on curriculum? New, modified, and deleted? If not, can I entertain a motion?
I so moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Nunes, seconded by Mr. Mann. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 12 is our Visalia General Obligation Bond, Measure I, Citizens Oversight Committee, Ms. Staton and Mr. McDonald. Hi, Josh.
Hello. Josh McDonald, I'm the chair of the
Citizens Measure I Bond Oversight Committee for the Visalia bond. The oversight committees were established to review and report to your board on the college's expenditures utilizing the Measure I funds. The committee meets at least a couple of times a year. It's slowed down over the past couple or 3 years simply because the monies have largely been used. Before you is the Citizens Oversight Committee's 2013-14 annual report, and there is some specific language that I need to state. The Citizens Oversight Committee finds that the bond revenues were expended on the specific projects approved by the voters, and that no funds were used for any teacher or administrative salaries or other school operating expenses. As a side note, I often point to Measure I as the absolute model for a bond and how the expenditures should be spent. And I look forward to the college in the future coming up with the next bond. I hope and anticipate that it will be soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Is there any money left in there, or is that,
Pennies.
so it's basically gone, it's done?
Yeah.
Good.
We're spending down the interest now, Greg, on the Live Oak building.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, and thanks for being here tonight, Josh, we appreciate it. That being said, do I have a motion to approve the oversight activity report?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Sherman, seconded by Mr. Zumwalt. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 13, Artillery General Obligation Bond Measure J. Ms. Statton and Ms. Santis is not here, so you will make that point?
We were hoping Irene would be able to make it, but Christine can give the report.
Okay.
I'll give the report briefly. Irene was going to be here tonight, but her daughter was sick and she had to
Okay.
take her to the doctor's appointment, so she couldn't make it. I'm presenting the annual report for Measure J from the Citizens Oversight Committee. And similar to Josh, it's a fairly short report, but it does cover the bond measure that was approved by the board November 4th, 2008. The report lists all of our members. It's for the fiscal year 2013-14. So some members have changed, especially our students. The committee met November 19th and March 18th. And specifically during March 18th, they reviewed the annual bond audit report, which was for 12-13. They also have findings in this report, and I'll read those based on the information of the June 30th, 2014. They also found that the bond revenues were expended on specific projects approved by the voters, and no funds were used for teacher administrative salaries or other school operating expenses. And so that is the report that they were gonna submit tonight, or they're submitting. They will continue to meet. I think we're planning on one more meeting next spring, perhaps, rather than continuing this twice a year. All those funds are spent except for some remaining dollars that were set aside that will be joined with the interest to pay back the band. So they're basically completely spent there in Measure J. And right now, we're trying to get those dollars put together to wire in for an early payment to be held by U.S. Bank, that is the trustee bank for that account. And that way, the expenditures are actually spent, and we don't have to wait for 2 years down the road when the band will be paid off. So,
I have a question on that now. Because of the property values that had dropped so much over there, we were only able to use, what, $30 million or something of the 60 million that was approved. But if property values continue to increase, then we have the right to use, would they start a new committee or at that point, or?
very good point. Probably we would authorize a new committee to start at that point. What we're hoping to do is issue enough bonds to make the difference for the band payment. And that would be just about $2 million. If we could issue more at that time, my recommendation would be to hold off and let that build over the years until they could get up to the full authorization and maybe do a different project, or even half of the difference and do another project, and at that time form another committee.
Right. I think for it to be valid, Greg, we would have to initiate and have the board appoint a new committee for the measure proceeds at that time, because it would be so far removed from the first election.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the activity report for Artillery Obligation Bond Measure J?
Move we approve.
Moved by Earl, seconded by Mr. Nunes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. All right, moving on to item number 14. Thank you, Ms. Staton. Our accrediting commission for community and junior colleges follow-up report.
Okay, on behalf of Dr. Lacerna, the agenda item before you tonight is the second and final reading of the accreditation follow-up report. You'll recall last meeting, Dr. Lacerna took us through a handful of slides outlining for you the process that we've gone through to prepare this follow-up report, specifically the standards that were addressed and the recommendations that we've responded to. We had an opportunity for all of you to have that report in your hands, both in draft form and now in pretty final form. And so what we'd like to do tonight is get your second read final action to approve this. As you can see, according to our timeline on the board agenda backup information here, this follow-up report is due for us to be submitted by October 15th. Today's the 13th, so we would like your approval so that we can get this.
Is it on the way as we approve it?
Yes, yes. It'll be overnight tomorrow. So we have it ready to go, but we did want to make sure we had final board approval.
I think we should table this too.
No,
Jennifer's not
don't.
here. Can I text her real quick, Jennifer?
Yeah,
No.
don't do that.
Don't make her more sick, right?
Right.
Do we have any questions on our accrediting commission report, follow-up report by any board members? If not, can I entertain a motion?
Make a motion to waive second reading and approve the follow-up report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 15. Thank you, Stan. A resolution to permanently transfer funds from the Hispanic Serving Institution Fund to the General Fund. Resolution number 2014-13, which is a roll call vote.
That just about explains it. Every year we transfer $15,000 in from the trust, the Hispanic Serving Institute Trust, to our math, English, and science achievement program. And we're requesting that you approve that resolution again for the year 14-15.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Zumwalt, seconded by Mr. Sherman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
No, it's a roll.
Oh, roll call, sorry, Megan, I just said that.
Right.
Megan, hold the board.
Roll call vote.
Apologize.
Trustee Zumwalt.
Aye.
Trustee Sherman.
Aye.
Trustee Mann.
Aye.
Trustee Nunes.
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza.
Aye. Motion passes, roll call vote. All right. Item number 16 is the purchase of real property, resolution number 2014-14, which is also a roll call vote, if I can remember.
I move we approve resolution 2014-14.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Obviously, we discussed this in closed session. Any further discussion? Okay, Megan, please pull the board.
It was just Sherman and Mann.
Sherman and Mann. Yeah.
You guys went fast. Trustee Sherman.
Aye.
Trustee Mann.
Aye.
Trustee Nunes.
Aye.
Trustee Zumwalt.
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza.
Aye. Motion passes. On item number 16, do you have anybody in the audience that needs an explanation since we moved right through that? Does anybody need an explanation? No? All right, then we'll move forward. I don't want to.
I just want to make one comment
Okay.
related to item number 16. This property purchase has been authorized by the board. If you're not familiar with where it is on Shady Street, it's one of the smaller apartment complexes adjacent to what we already own. It's been a long-term plan for the board to acquire property in that area. It was purchased with restricted funds that came from the previous sale of the Linwood Farm. So it isn't a general fund expenditure, it's a one-time expenditure, the board's paying cash, but it was from restricted dollars. And I know that's typically what everybody wants to know is, okay, if we bought property, where'd the money come from? So that's the source of expenditure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last item on our agenda is number 17, which is our 2014-15 budget transfers in categorical funds. Ms. Staff.
Okay, this looks like a long process for a very simple, quick item, but there are a couple programs in the state that are still flexible. One is parity at about $173,000, the other is adjunct office hours about $2,000. We don't plan to use them for flexing purposes, but this keeps the door open if there was any need. Regarding the parity, I would also need
have we ever, and if so, why?
I don't think we have, but, I mean, most educational agencies, you know, really it came out of those crisis years that we've just come out of. And, the state alleviated some of the requirements of all these categorical programs and said you can use them for general fund unrestricted if you get in dire straits. Most educational agencies said, yes, we'll open that door, so at least we don't get caught. So
Right.
whether trigger cuts came mid-year or something like that.
Then you'd have some flexibility. Okay, got it. Okay, any further questions on item number 17? If not, can I entertain a motion? Moved by Mr. Zumwalt,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Sherman. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
You got
We
your
have-
dollar.
Thank you.
Do we have any further items, further information items? Thank you for our big crowd tonight. I appreciate all of you coming out. Stay until the end. Meeting adjourned.
Good job.